Hey everyone! Before we get started, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing how far this community reaches. And while you're at it, don't forget to subscribe. Alright, let's jump into today's video. The case of Gary Felton and family. In 1986, Gary Felton was working at a computer software company in England when he met a man named Simon Anthony Cadwell. Felton stole Cadwell's birth certificate and used it to apply for a passport in his own name. While the reasons behind this act remain unclear, it is evident that after receiving the new passport, Felton left the UK and traveled extensively, including spending time in Australia and India. By 1997, at the age of 32, Felton met 17-year-old Chantel McDougall at a seminar he was leading in Melbourne, Australia. He offered her a babysitting job for his young son, and before long, Felton left his partner and began a relationship with Chantel. The couple soon became pregnant with their child, a daughter named Lila, and they settled in Nannup, a small town in Western Australia. Felton continued using his alias, Simon Cadwell, and Chantel was unaware that this wasn't his real name. However, she was aware of Felton's involvement in cult activities. During his life, Felton authored several books on his spiritual beliefs and created the Truth Fellowship website, along with an online chat forum called The Gateway. Worldwide, Felton had around 40 followers who referred to themselves as the Forecourt and were devoted to a sacred text he wrote called The Severs of the Divine Plan. The book predicted the birth of a new world of higher consciousness at the end of a 75,000-year cycle. Felton claimed his followers needed to prepare for a judgment day in which they would transition into a higher dimension. Ultimately, the plan involved his followers taking their own lives to achieve this goal. At least 2 of his devotees carried out this final act. In the months leading up to their disappearance, Felton, 45, along with his 27-year-old partner Chantel and their 40-year-old tenant and follower, Antonio Popic, began telling friends and family that they would soon be traveling to Brazil to join a religious cult in Rio Branco. Felton also informed his followers of the plan. While Chantel and Antonio were well-liked and active in their local community, Felton was not. He reportedly spent much of his time indoors on his computer and had a tendency to stay up all night and sleep all day. Chantel worked as a swimming instructor while Tony was employed at a hardware store. His boss noted that he was a diligent worker. Felton did not work and was supported by his girlfriend and follower. Neighbors described him as paranoid and eccentric, and they recalled a time that he became so concerned by the installation garden and screamed at Tony after he began digging them back up. Reportedly, Felton exerted much control over the other adults who acted submissive towards him. Chantal's parents believed she was scared of her boyfriend, although police found no records of injuries or domestic violence reports. Tony, Chantel, Felton, and Layla were last seen on July 13, 2007 when they sold Chantel's vehicle for $4,000. In the years since their disappearance, the money has sat untouched in Chantel's bank account. In the weeks prior to the sale, the family had also rehomed their dogs and chickens and been in contact with their estate agent telling him that he could sell or take the furniture, as they had no need for it. Chantel's mother also noted that a passport had arrived for 6-year-old Lila. 6 days after they were last seen on July 19th, the couple's landlord entered their abandoned home. There are mixed reports about how it was found, with some sources saying it was neat and tidy, with others claiming that dirty dishes littered the kitchen countertops and other surfaces. Either way, the couple had left their possessions behind, including their wallets and credit cards. A note was found attached to the door which simply read, "Gone to Brazil." Investigators later found out that Tony's father had given him $25,000, which he believed his son needed for a legal matter, although the money was never traced. In February, Chantel's parents reported her and Layla missing. They were concerned that they hadn't heard from their daughter in months. Likewise, Tony's brother reported him missing 1 month later, expressing the same concerns. Authorities discovered that there was no record of the foursome leaving the country, and they were unable to find any witnesses who had seen the family either in Brazil or Australia past July 13th. Upon examining Felton's computer, however, they found a chilling statement that the 45-year-old had written in the months before the family were last seen. He had posted it to an online journal. It read, "I am exhausted and the only option left is to leave this world." They also managed to make contact with a follower of Felton's who revealed that he'd discussed his plan to kill himself, Chantel, and Layla by overdosing on barbiturates. However, she later claimed that Felton changed his mind and decided they should live in isolation instead. In 2013, Western Australia police discovered evidence that someone using Tony's ID stayed at a Northbridge hostel called Underground Backpackers on July 15, 2007, just 2 days after the family was last seen. Tony's driver's license was used to rent a double room. Around the same time, Tony's phone was used to purchase several train tickets. The tickets showed a journey from Bunbury to Perth earlier that day, with another trip to Calgary scheduled for the following morning. The tickets were bought by someone using the name J. Roberts. There was no evidence indicating that other family members were on the trains, and it's unclear whether it was Tony on board or Felton, who might have stolen Tony's identity. Despite authorities appealing to the public for information about this person, they were unable to gather any leads. J. Roberts has not been heard from since, and Tony's phone hasn't been used either. Several theories have emerged in this case. At one time, it was believed possible that a young homeless teenager who slept on the streets of Rome, Italy was Lila, as she had been 16 at the time. The girl bore a striking resemblance to Lila's photograph and spoke with tourists and locals in English. However, this girl has since been identified as a young woman from Sweden. Another theory in the disappearances is that the foursome were on board the TAN Airlines Flight 3054 on July 17, 2007. The plane veered off at the end of the runway at Sao Paulo Airport, narrowly missed the highway, and collided with a fuel depot before bursting into flames. All 181 passengers and crew on board were killed, and nearly 1/3 of the bodies were burned beyond recognition. However, a joint investigation by Brazilian and Australian authorities concluded that the family had not been on the flight. Online sleuths commonly believe that the disappearances were the result of a murder-suicide, with some speculating that Felton may have killed Chantal, Layla, and Tony before going on the run. It's also been suggested that he stole Tony's identity or may now be living off the grid. Over the years, there have been 4 alleged sightings of the group, but none have been verified. The Western Australia Police Force continues to investigate the disappearances. A 2018 inquest determined that it was impossible to determine whether the group is alive or dead, as there is no evidence to suggest either outcome. Clinical behavioral psychiatrist Chris Gyson expressed her belief that Layla, Tony, and Chantel are likely dead, but that Felton may still be alive. Gyson described Felton as a narcissistic con man. If you have any information regarding the disappearances of Gary Felton, Antonio Popic, and Chantel and Layla McDougall, you can contact Crime Stoppers Australia at +1 8-0-0-3-0. The case of Lynette Vonda Pontius. Lynette Pontius was born in Battle Creek, Michigan, USA. She was the youngest child in her family with 2 brothers who were 2 and 3 years older than her. Lynette was very active, sociable, and cheerful, so she was always popular in every group of friends. She was also very attractive and caught the attention of the opposite sex. She never lacked boyfriends and led a somewhat carefree lifestyle. As a result, Lynette became pregnant and had to leave school in the grade. When Lynette turned 16, she gave birth to her child. She lived with the child's father for a while, but they eventually broke up. He showed no interest in Lynette or the baby, and he disappeared and ignored all attempts to contact him. Lynette's situation was difficult. She struggled to find a suitable job so that she could conveniently take care of her newborn child, and no one wanted to hire Lynette, a teenage mother. Eventually, Lynette found work at a fast food restaurant. To make ends meet, she continued to build relationships. She was interested in several guys in her social circle until she met Martin, a customer at the restaurant who was 2 years older than her. Martin was from the same city as Lynette. After high school, he took a part-time job at a private company owned by a married couple who made fences. He wasn't interested in pursuing higher education, so he spent his free time with friends. In 1999, Martin and Lynette started dating after being introduced by a mutual friend. Despite being somewhat bold, Martin was overall a likable person and always kept a positive attitude. Lynette's relatives believed that he would be able to guide her in the right direction. However, there were rumors that Martin struggled with an addiction to mild substances. Martin and Lynette dated for less than a year, but during that time, he became part of Lynette's family. Her parents welcomed him with open arms, and he came and went from their home freely. However, love that blooms quickly also fades easily. Later, Martin admitted that Lynette was manipulative and accepted no disagreement from others. They had regular conflicts which led to their breakup. It seemed like nothing special had happened, just two young people who didn't get along. But a few weeks after the breakup, everything changed when Lynette called Martin and told him she was pregnant. Initially, Martin doubted that the child was not his, but Lynette insisted it was. A greater surprise came when Lynette was arrested for identity theft, cashing other people's checks, and several other minor scams. Her explanation was that she had committed these crimes out of desperation as she had no other means of supporting her children. Despite this, Lynette faced the possibility of prison. To protect their child from ending up in an orphanage, Martin chose to become the boy's legal guardian. He felt responsible for this child and wanted to provide as much support as possible. Martin was a thoughtful father who put his children's needs after Lynette's release from prison in February 2005. He and Lynette came to a mutual agreement. Martin allowed the children to maintain contact with their mother, and during her imprisonment, he frequently took them to visit her for several hours. Martin made sure the kids had regular extended visits with Lynette during her imprisonment. Martin had proven himself to be a thoughtful father. He took the children hiking and spent all his free time with them. Even after Lynette's release, life continued smoothly for the family. Martin and Lynette, who were once a couple, agreed on custody arrangements that allowed Lynette to have regular visits with their child. Lynette took custody of their older child. Meanwhile, she started dating a new man and soon became pregnant with her child. She then officially publicized her relationship with the father of her unborn child. During this time, Martin had to leave Battle Creek and move to Kalamazoo. In Kalamazoo, he began a relationship with a new girl, Elizabeth, who also had a child. Martin and Lynette grew apart, but they remained connected through their daughter. Everything in the family seemed fine. However, Lynette became concerned as the distance between her and her daughter grew. Matters became more complicated in February 2007 when Martin Campbell was attacked at his girlfriend Elizabeth's house. During the attack, he was shot once in the leg and once in the shoulder. As Martin attempted to flee, he collapsed from the pain and shock. The attacker then pointed the gun at Martin's head and pulled the trigger twice. The attacker intended to empty the entire magazine into Martin. However, after 2 shots to the head, the weapon jammed. Determined to kill Martin, the criminal furiously began to hit him on the head with the pistol. He then left the bleeding Martin on the floor and calmly walked away. Meanwhile, the police continued their investigation and spoke with a witness. Elizabeth provided the clues about the criminal. Although he wore a mask, she noticed that he appeared much older as she saw a mustache with gray hairs peeking through. The killer's behavior was clear. He didn't steal anything or attack Elizabeth. His target was Martin. This was evident from the brutality of the attack, which left no chance for Martin's survival. At that time, doctors were trying to save Martin's life. Despite suffering severe head and face injuries, he survived, which was nothing short of a miracle. He was fortunate because the gun jammed. Even a shot to the head could have been fatal. The bullet hit his shoulder and narrowly missed a major artery. Had it been severed, Martin would have bled to death before the ambulance arrived. Martin's miraculous survival was also crucial for the investigation as it allowed detectives to get information directly from him. Once his condition stabilized, detectives visited him in the hospital to talk. Martin and Elizabeth were certain that the attempted murder was not random. This was the attempt on his life that he had survived. In late February, just days before the shooting, Elizabeth reported an attempted murder while she was returning from the store. As she drove into the garage, a stranger crashed into her car's trunk, blocking her vehicle and the garage door, preventing it from closing. She got out and saw a black SUV from which an armed man emerged. The man pointed a gun at Elizabeth's head and asked where Martin was. However, she remained calm and told him that Martin was not home. This was a lie, as she knew Martin was playing with the children in the backyard. She lied to protect their lives. Her tactic worked. The man believed her and left. Before leaving, he mentioned that Martin owed him a large sum of money and he was there to collect the debt, warning that he would not leave them alone. At that time, Elizabeth contacted the police and provided a detailed description of the man and his car. Additionally, a neighbor witnessed the skirmish, sensed something was wrong, and noted the car's license plate. However, the police discovered that the car was reported stolen and registered in another state, which did not help the investigation. It seemed the search for the criminal had reached a dead end. Nevertheless, a similar car was found a few blocks from the attack site in an apartment complex parking lot. The police attempted to track down the driver of the black SUV but were unsuccessful. The day before the unexpected attack, a masked man broke into Martin and Elizabeth's house and shot Martin at close range. Martin was certain that the killer had been sent by his ex, Lynette Pontius. She was the only person with a motive against him. Her criminal record raised suspicions as she had previously spent 2 years in prison for financial crimes, including fraud and extortion. However, initially after her release, there were no issues and Martin did not restrict her communication with their child. Lynette quickly began to control things and she wanted more. She sought to control the process of raising her children and would behave brutally when she was dissatisfied with something. This led to constant conflicts. As a result, Martin decided to reduce the time his daughter spent with her biological mother, Lynette, which further angered her. Finally, she went to court to dispute Martin's custody. However, she faced an obstacle due to her previous convictions, which worked against her, giving Martin a strong chance of winning. This could have been the last straw, making her hate him more and more. Investigators had several questions, particularly about why Lynette had resorted to such actions. Until now, no one had ever observed any aggressive behavior in Lynette. All her relatives and friends knew her as a kind and cheerful person. Additionally, it was clear that the attacker was an older man on both occasions, suggesting that Lynette might truly be innocent. To find answers, the detectives decided to directly contact the main suspect in organizing the assassination attempt. They were surprised to discover that Lynette had left her hometown the day after the shooting at Martin and Elizabeth's house. Elizabeth found it suspicious to exclude Lynette from the suspect list. However, finding and detaining Lynette was not easy. It was discovered that she was trying to flee the country and a nationwide search was launched to capture her. During this time, detectives received another lead. It was revealed that Martin might owe large sums of money to criminal organizations. Some of Martin's friends mentioned that he had been in debt for a long time. Martin used to consume soft substances and smoke. He admitted this to the police but insisted that those days were behind him. Martin claimed that he only used these substances during his time with Lynette and had quit his bad habits long ago. Before Lynette was caught, a prisoner from the local jail informed the police that Lynette had approached him sometime before the attack, offering money to carry out an attack on Martin. Lynette was searching for a mercenary to kill Martin. She devised a cunning plan. Accordingly, the killer must win Martin's trust and after a while, get him drunk or on mild narcotics to ensure unconsciousness. Afterward, the hired killer would eliminate Martin. Lynette believed it would be best to make it look like an accident. Overall, She didn't care about the method as long as Martin died so that she could gain custody of their daughter. Later, the police gathered evidence from various individuals who reported receiving similar requests and provocations from Lynette. Many people claimed that she had tried to hire them as mercenaries, but none of them were actual shooters and they all declined the offer. Fortunately, the police quickly identified the killer, who was likely the person who agreed to help Lynette. This suspect was a 59-year-old man named Joseph Lover who was romantically involved with Lynette. He had a history of involvement in numerous serious crimes. Joseph fit the description of the attacker and was capable of carrying out such a bold attack in broad daylight. The brutal massacre aligned with the style of Joseph, a man who had spent most of his life in prison. However, when the police attempted to locate him, they discovered that he had left the city around the same time Lynette disappeared. It is likely that they fled together. Lynette and Joseph managed to stay hidden until February 13, 2007, when they were discovered near the Mexico-US border. They had been planning to escape to another country to avoid facing justice. However, Lynette realized she needed to retrieve some important documents she had left behind in Mexico and had to return for them. Unfortunately for them, the police were already there waiting to capture them. 5 days later, they were taken into custody, which was a great relief for Martin, who was worried about another attack. Although he was pleased with the arrest, the investigation struggled to communicate with the criminals. Surprisingly, Joseph was very cooperative with the detectives. He admitted to driving a stolen car and having a pistol, hoping for a reduced sentence. However, he consistently denied being involved in the attack and attempted murder of Martin. Lynette partially backed up his claims, stating she had hired a mercenary to confront Martin. Her intention, she said, was not to kill him but to scare him into relinquishing custody of their daughter. Being separated from her daughter made Lynette extremely miserable. She claimed that Martin did not allow her to see her daughter. Additionally, she alleged that she found evidence of Martin abusing her daughter. Lynette accused Martin of substance abuse and domestic violence. She also shared details about their relationship, stating that Martin had repeatedly beaten her, which led to their breakup. Lynette did not see him as a benefactor, saying that he took advantage of her difficult circumstances when their daughter was born. He allegedly forced her to sign documents and formalize guardianship while she was helpless in prison. She believed Martin acted shamelessly in taking advantage of her situation. The interrogations of the two suspects, Lynette and Joseph, happened at the same time but in different rooms to compare their stories. The investigators, having received information from Lynette, decided to confront Joseph. Initially, Joseph refused to tell the truth. However, once he learned that Lynette was trying to turn him in to the police, Joseph changed his story. He claimed that Lynette had approached him in February 2007 with a request to kill Martin. Lynette didn't care how Martin died, she just wanted him gone forever. The plan was for Martin to disappear without any witnesses and his body would be disposed of discreetly. But Lynette didn't expect Joseph to act in a dramatic manner. Joseph's story matched what the police already knew. During the investigation, the police chose to disclose this information to observe Lynette's response. Lynette, however, cleverly refused to give a statement and asked for a lawyer. Prosecutors claimed that Lynette's main motive was her dissatisfaction with the decisions regarding her child's upbringing and restrictions on communicating with her. She tried to challenge custody in court but was unsuccessful. After that, Lynette didn't stop and decided to hire a hitman. Joseph Lover, 51 years old, was also charged with attempted murder. This man admitted his guilt and provided the police with a detailed report. The trial was full of surprises, starting when Joseph unexpectedly changed his earlier testimony during the hearing. He retracted his previous statements and took full responsibility for the incident, claiming that Lynette was not involved and that he was solely responsible for planning and executing the assassination attempt. It seemed like Joseph loved Lynette so much that he wanted to protect her. However, before the next stage of the hearing, Joseph shocked everyone again by reverting to his original story, asserting that Lynette had hired him as a hitman. To obtain these confessions from Joseph, the prosecution suggested a plea deal. In this case, the prosecutor's office re-entered the proceedings, aiming to demonstrate that Lynette had a justified motive. Lynette clearly disliked Martin due to dissatisfaction with custody arrangements. However, the prosecutor's office relied on very limited evidence. In reality, there was nothing concrete to directly implicate Lynette in the crime. There were no phone records or messages, and Joseph, the sole witness, was unreliable, which weakened the prosecution's position. Lynette's lawyer effectively used these weaknesses to persuade the jury of her innocence. On October 3rd of that year, Joseph confirmed to the jury that Lynette was the mastermind behind the plan to kill Martin. He confirmed that she had formulated the whole plan. However, his numerous contradictions and retractions during the testimony made the jury question his credibility. The defense then made a surprising move. According to Lynette, Martin was an abusive father who often physically harmed his daughter. She presented photos showing bruises on the child's arms and back as evidence. In response, Martin's family defended him by disputing these accusations. They suggested the photos only showed minor abrasions that a child might get accidentally, arguing they did not resemble signs of abuse. They even implied that Lynette herself might have caused the bruises. Despite the defenses put forward by Martin's relatives, Lynette successfully raised doubts in the jury's minds, portraying herself as a victim. This tactic aimed to make Martin's murder seem like an act of kindness in protection of the child. In the end, the lawyers portrayed her accomplice, Joseph, as a true hero. They argued that Joseph was protecting Lynette and her daughter. Lynette did not ask for Martin to be killed, she only wanted to scare him. However, Joseph, a seasoned criminal, believed he was rescuing the girl from cruelty and tyranny, which led him to attempt to kill Martin. Additionally, the defense argued that Lynette could not have planned the murder herself because if that had happened, she would likely have faced life in prison. This was inconsistent with the image of a loving, caring mother seeking custody of her child. Now, the jury had to make a decision in this complicated case. On October 5, 2007, after lengthy discussions, the jury announced the verdict in this case. Lynette was found guilty of orchestrating the attack. Her extravagant lifestyle and criminal record worked against her. The jury didn't believe the lawyer who portrayed Martin as an abuser involved in domestic violence against the child. In fact, there was no evidence to support these claims. Lynette's family was shocked by the jury's verdict. Initially, Lynette was sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 50 years, but the sentence was later changed. However, the judge considered Lynette to be a socially dangerous person. He sincerely expressed his hope that no parole board would ever decide to release the woman. Lynette remains in the Huron Correctional Facility for Women. She has served enough of her sentence to apply for parole and has submitted a petition. Lynette is hopeful about being released soon, but no decision has been made yet. Martin's family hopes she will never be released. Her accomplice, Joseph, received a life sentence without the possibility of parole. The case of Vera Pectoliva. 15 neighbors stood outside an iron door, listening to the frantic, heart-pounding screams of a young woman for 6 hours. 7 times they called the police, begging for help. On the other side of the door, Vera Pectoliva, just 22 years old, was being murdered by her disturbed ex-boyfriend. Despite the urgency, inside the police office, there was no sense of urgency or concern. Video footage showed officers going about their work as usual, unaffected by the horrifying events taking place. There was no rush or fear from them, and the worried voices of the frantic callers seemed to concern them more than the fact that a woman was dying just steps away. Finally, the neighbors, in a state of panic, used a crowbar to break open the door. But by then it was too late. Vera had already lost her life. Vera Pectoliva, just 22 years old, was from Komarova, Russia. She was full of life, beautiful and talented. Gifted with a beautiful singing voice, she won numerous school contests, and many people expected her to pursue a career in the arts. But Vera surprised everyone by choosing to study economic security, with aspirations of fighting corruption. Growing up, her parents went through a divorce, but Vera remained close to both of them and even formed good relationships with their new partners. However, she shared a particularly strong bond with her mother, Oksana. Their hopes, fears, and secrets were all shared. This meant that Vera's mom knew about her relationship with Vladislav Canis, a boy she used to go to school with. In February 2016, Vera and Vlad met again at a party and hit it off right away. One thing was wrong though. Vlad was bad news. His life wasn't easy at all. When he was very young, his mom left, leaving him with his dad who was always getting into trouble with the law. It got really bad after that. Vlad saw his father kill himself with a hunting gun. Everything just fell apart after that terrible event. He quit school in the grade, never really found his way, and drank way too much. He was shy, angry, and violent according to people who knew him. He was also known for being mean and had a criminal record for stealing. It was clear that he wasn't the right kind of person to date someone important to you, and Vera's parents were quick to let her know this. Her dad begged her to leave him, and her mom thought Vlad was only interested in her. Vera was in love though, so she couldn't see the big red flags. She was sure that her love would fix him and help her change him. She shared cute pictures of them together on social media, making them look like any other happy couple, but that wasn't at all what it was. Vera moved into an apartment in Komarovo near her college in February 2019. Her parents helped pay the rent. Soon after, Vlad moved in with her, and things began to go badly. Vlad wouldn't do anything to help. There was nothing he would do but drink. He also wouldn't look for work. Oksana saw that something was wrong and told Vera that he was using her. Her friends also saw it and told Vera that he was only using her to get money. She didn't want to hear it though. She didn't leave him. Instead, she began hiding the fact that they were dating. Vera stopped sharing pictures of Vlad and his family online. And Vlad stopped going to family events. He seemed to tuck away a part of her life that she was having a hard time with on her own. Her folks thought the worst. Vlad was taking advantage of her. Vera had had enough by November 2019. Vlad hurt her physically. And they fought a lot before she understood he would never change, so she left him. Her folks were happy about it. Vlad was meant to leave the apartment, but he wouldn't. His easy life with Vera was something he had no plans to give up. He even threatened to kill Vera if she didn't stay with him. He didn't think it was serious because his brother Stanislav thought it was just a threat made in a hurry. Vera didn't want to cause any trouble, so she decided to leave quietly. She moved into her college dorm with just a few essentials, leaving most of her belongings behind. Meanwhile, Vlad stayed in her apartment, and Vera even had her parents pay for another month's rent without them knowing she wasn't living there anymore. In the following weeks, Vera tried to arrange a time to retrieve her things, but whenever she called Vlad, he either didn't answer or made excuses. Then, on January 12, 2020, he suddenly called her and told her to come pick up her belongings. Vera had a test the next day, but she went to the apartment around 5 p.m., hoping to get everything sorted quickly. She had made plans for a friend to meet her at the dorm at 6 p.m. to help her move. She never got out of that room alive though. The sounds from that night are very scary. At 5:08 p.m., Vera told her friend by text message that she would be done packing in 30 minutes. She was going to take a taxi and get back to the room by 6 p.m. so they could meet there to carry the rest of her stuff. After that, things changed. In the next message, you could hear Vera and Vlad arguing. Vlad was very adamant that no one, especially her friend, could enter the room. Not long after, Vera sent another message, but this time, she whispered it. So it was clear she was scared. A message came through before her friends could do anything. Last time, it was Vera. This time, it was Vlad. He took her phone. That's when things went badly. People think that the fighting began soon after. Her friend must have known something was wrong because she kept calling and calling to no avail. But at 7:19 p.m., Vlad sent her a voice message to calm her down. During their meeting, he said that everything was okay and that he would help Vera with her things when they were done. Vera's friend reluctantly stepped back because she didn't want to get in the way. She had no idea that those hours would be Vera's last. Then very early on January 14, 2020, someone broke the silence in the apartment building. At 3 a.m., Vera's screams of pain could be heard throughout the halls as Vlad beat her badly. Only the next-door neighbors came out, but soon, scared people from all over the building gathered outside the door. Her cries of pain could be heard through the walls as she begged for help. They called the cops out of fear. At one point, Vera was able to get away. She ran to the iron door and screamed for help, pounding on it desperately. The door was too strong though. The people next door tried to get through, but they failed. They called the cops again because they could hear Vlad pulling her back inside. The horror kept going. Someone else's screams could be heard in the next call. She was still at the door pleading for help while Vlad kept beating her badly. The cops never showed up though. Still, Vlad didn't think that one jab was enough. He meant for her to be hurt. He then got a sharper knife and slowly and deliberately cut her 5 more times. The neighbors were crazy outside. As they scampered around, they looked for anything that could break the iron door. It seemed like every second went by so slowly. Every scream coming from inside the flat made them want to kill someone more. As they listened to Vera being beaten, they kept calling the cops and pleading for help. One of the people outside that door who could hear everything was Stanislav, Vlad's brother. He had talked to Vlad earlier that day, and something about it made him feel bad. He ran to the flat, but got stuck on the other side of the door. He knew that getting inside was important for Vera's life. They called the cops 7 times in 3.5 hours out of desperation. Vera's screams and the sickening sound of her being struck could be heard all the way down the hallway. But no one came to help because domestic abuse isn't taken seriously in Russia. People don't see it as a crime. They see it as a family problem. The belief that if he hits you, he loves you remains a deeply ingrained notion in some parts of the culture. In February 2017, Russia decriminalized timed domestic battery, meaning that if the assault doesn't result in hospitalization, it's seen as a minor violation, leading only to fines or warnings, no serious consequences. Efforts to protect women have been blocked by certain political groups, citing concerns that such measures go against traditional family values. Vera was left to die in this environment, with repeated calls to the police going unanswered. The final terrifying argument took place just before dawn, around 6:30 a.m. Vera was pleading for her life near the door, but suddenly, everything went quiet. Vlad, in a soft, almost tender voice, spoke to her. "Vera, please forgive me. I love you so much." Then there was a dull thud. Vlad had given her the last fatal blow to the back of the head, which had caused terrible brain damage. That wasn't enough for him though. Then he wrapped the iron's cord around her already dead body and pulled, just to be sure she was dead. One of the neighbors found a metal crowbar in a nearby parking lot soon after her last cries stopped. They were desperate and began to look through the iron door. It must have seemed like forever, but they finally forced it open. They were shocked by what they saw inside. There was blood all over the place, on the walls and the roof. On the floor, Vera's body was lying dead and badly cut up. They found Vlad in the bathroom. He was drunk, lying on the floor with the bloody kitchen knife in his hand. It was almost 7 a.m. when one of the scared neighbors called the cops one last time, her voice shaking with sadness. That's when the cops finally showed up to take her body away. Investigators from the police found 56 different cuts on Vera's body. Head injuries, deep cuts, and broken bones. It was an incredibly cruel crime. Vlad tried to get away, but his neighbors wouldn't let him. The whole country was furious as news of Vera's death spread. People were shocked when video of the emergency workers came out. Instead of rushing to help, these cops were just sipping tea, not even noticing the desperate calls for help. It looked like the neighbors' swearing made them more angry than the fact that Vera was being abused for hours. Their reason? Mikhail Basov, The officer in charge said he only had one patrol car left, so he sent it to check on an old man who had already died. This happened again after a shift change. The new cop, Dmitry Sarachev, got calls about Vera's situation, but he said there were no cars available and no gas. It turned out they had fuel though. Maybe they didn't, but they didn't try to fix it either. What was the most upsetting part? Vera might have been saved. When the case finally got to court, 3 emergency workers were charged with failing to do their jobs. They were found guilty, but their terms were light. Just 1.5 to 2.5 years suspended. They all kept their jobs. They were told to pay Vera's family only $369 each instead. That's it. They couldn't save Vera, and the system let her down again. The next day when he was being questioned, Vlad tried to make up his own story. He said that on January 12th, he called Vera and offered to help her move the rest of her stuff to a new apartment. They agreed to meet in the afternoon on January 13th. Along with Vera's belongings, they packed Vlad's things too, as he didn't want to stay in the apartment without her. Afterward, Vlad claimed they had a pleasant evening, drinking beer, liquor, and vodka until 5 a.m. with no issues. He explained that things only took a turn when he brought up the possibility of them getting back together. According to Vlad, Vera became upset when he suggested this and accused him of knowing she was seeing someone else. From his perspective, that was when she began insulting him, hitting him, and kicking him in the groin multiple times. Vlad said that her threats made him angry, which escalated the fight. Although he offered to help Vera move, it was never a genuine offer. He likely thought that if they drank enough, the tension between them would dissipate. However, things spiraled completely out of control when it became evident that Vera had no intention of reconciling with him. Vlad launched a horrific attack while drunk, angry, and full of jealousy. He tried to play down what he had done by saying that he had only hit Vera 4 times, and that each time he had only used the palm of his hand. He said she must have hit her head on a cabinet when she fell. Then he said he had strangled her with an iron cord, but not to kill her, not to scream, but to make her pass out. I put the iron chain around Vera's neck. After that, I made the cord around her neck a little tighter. I put pressure on her neck for about 15 seconds. I didn't know at the time that what I did could kill Vera. I chose not to kill Vera. I wanted to scare Vera. So I pulled the cord tighter around her neck. I really wanted her to pass out. It was time for her to sleep for 15 minutes. He said that even after he took the line off, Vera was still making noises, so he thought she was okay. But when he tried to wake her up later, she wasn't responding at all. He felt her pulse and found nothing. He finally knew what he had done after that. After that, he lost consciousness totally. The next thing I don't remember, I only remember that I went to the bathroom at some point. As the probe went on, Vlad slowly began to admit more and more horrible facts, but there was still no real regret in what he said. I don't remember how many times I hit her, but I think it was the same number the expert said. I admit that I hurt her in all the ways that were listed in the report. I wanted to be alone. I didn't think about how much pain she was in. During our fight, she yelled at me and called me names. I didn't like hitting her. I didn't like it when she screamed when I hit her. I told her to be quiet. In the meantime, people at the funeral home worked for hours to make Vera's face look nice. But no amount of work could fix what was done. Oksana, her mother, said Vera was totally unrecognizable. There were more than 1,000 people at her funeral in a small church. Most of them had to stand outside. The whole town was shocked by her cruel death. After that, Vlad was so bold as to say, "I'm sorry for what I did. Vera died because of what I did, but I never meant to kill her. Allow me to say sorry to her family." The worst part is that Vlad's horrible actions were played down in court. Oksana, Vera's mother, said that the official charge sheet said that Vera was hit 4 times and choked 4 times. At the same time, forensic data showed that she had 56 different wounds. What about the 3.5 hours of beatings and shame? Not even a mention. Vera's family and people who worked to stop domestic abuse knew this was all a plot to get her a light sentence. against domestic and sexual. Alyona Popova is a well-known activist. She even said that the Russian government cared more about protecting the killer and the cops than getting justice for Vera. In Russia, this way of thinking about domestic violence is already the rule, she said. Still, the government doesn't see domestic violence as a crime. Instead, it sees it as a centuries-old Russian family custom that it shouldn't get involved with. Because of this, the state does nothing and waits for the next body to be found. She had good reason to be scared. Vlad was given a 17-year sentence in a strict regime community and told to pay Vera's family $36,939 as reparations on July 28, 2022, as if that could ever make up for what he did. But that wasn't the end of the unfairness. Vlad was freed from prison in April 2023, only a few months into his term. His sentence was to serve time, but he was sent to fight in the Russian army on the front lines. He was free after only 6 months. Russia has been getting people out of jail to help with the war in Ukraine, and Vlad was one of those people. When a picture of Vlad showed up online, Vera's family learned the news. Oksana, her mom, was shocked and terrified. It's not fair that the man who tortured and killed her daughter was given a shot, but Vera never did. It got even worse for Oksana. Vera was terrified for her own safety. After all the things Vlad had done to her, what was to stop him from harming her again or hurting someone else? She had expressed that he could, at any moment, kill any of them out of revenge. Despite the pain and grief, Vera's family, along with human rights campaigners, continued to fight for justice on her behalf. Many have been encouraged by Alyona Popova to speak up. Don't stay silent. Raise your voice, she urged. Those who commit murder will continue to walk free on our streets if we don't speak out. When President Putin was criticized for his stance on such matters, he defended his decision, claiming that these criminals were atoning for their actions by fighting in the war, risking their lives in the midst of gunfire and blasts. The case of Kristen Denise Smart. Kristen Denise Smart was born on February 20, 1977 in Augsburg, Germany. She and her family moved to Stockton, California when she was a child. In 1996, Kristen enrolled at a California Polytechnic State University. On May 25th, she attended a party at a frat house. At approximately 2 a.m., she was found passed out on a neighbor's lawn by 2 fellow students, Cheryl Anderson and Tim Davis. They helped Kristen to her feet and decided to walk her back to her nearby dorm. Another student, Paul Flores, joined the group and offered to help get Kristen there safely. After a while of walking, Tim Davis left since he lived off campus. Thereafter, Anderson left and taught Flores to get Kristen to her dorm as he lived closest to her. That would be the last time Kristen was ever seen alive. She was reported missing to the university police department. They believed Kristen went on an unannounced vacation, but when she did not return, the investigation started. Paul Flores was questioned. He said that after he and Kristen reached his dorm, he left her to walk back to her dorm on her own. Investigators have always seen Paul Flores as the main suspect. Between 1996 and February 2007, investigators have conducted numerous searches at houses belonging to the Flores family. An earring that potentially belonged to Kristen was found by a tenant at a former residence of Paul Flores' mom. In September 2016, investigators excavated an area on the campus. They did find a few items had they decided to analyze. No more information on those items have been made public. In 2021, investigators started searching at Paul Flores' home once again. They used ground-penetrating radar and dogs. Numerous items of interest were found. This included a car belonging to Paul Flores' father, Ruben Flores. On April 13, 2021, Paul Flores and Ruben Flores were arrested by the San Luis Obispo County Sheriff's Office in relation to the case. Paul Flores is being held without bail and his 8-year-old father under $250,000 bail. San Luis Obispo County Sheriff Ian Parkinson said that he could not reveal what new evidence led to the break in the case. He also said that he is confident that he will find Kristen's remains. Kristen's parents made a statement after hearing about the news, could have held his horrible secret for nearly 25 years. Denying us the chance to allow our daughter to rest is an unrelenting and unforgiving pain. We now put our faith in the justice system and move forward, comforted in the knowledge that Kristen has been held in the hearts of so many and that she has not been forgotten. We are pleased that Kristen's case has now moved to the district attorney's office, where we know we will be in good hands and look forward to the day when there will be justice for Kristen. To heal, we must remember not only Kristen, but also every heart that carried Kristen and our family in theirs. Kristen's story is ultimately one of unwavering commitment, resilience, and immense gratitude. Just an hour after I finished the video, more information has been made public. San Luis Obispo County District Attorney Dan Dow said that Paul Flores took the life of Kristen after he tried to assault her. He said that it took place in Paul Flores' dorm room and that Ruben Flores helped dispose of Kristen's body. Dan also claims that they now know where her body was buried. The case of Krista Lewis. 34-year-old Krista Lewis lived in Lansing, Michigan in February 2008. She had recently broken up with her boyfriend, Brad Cornea. Krista went to Michigan State University to get a degree. In November 2008, Krista finished her classes, then took the bus home to a rented house on Eureka Street. Since she broke up with her boyfriend and he moved out, Krista was worried about making ends meet. Krista talked to one of her friends just after 5 p.m. That would be the last time she was seen or heard from. She was supposed to attend a class at a greenhouse half a mile from her home just after 6 p.m., but she never showed up. Her friends tried calling her, but she did not pick up. They then entered her home. Inside, they found her beloved cat alone. It also appeared as if she had been interrupted while cooking. Krista was nowhere to be seen. Brad Cornea quickly became a person of interest in the case, but he denied any involvement. He also had an alibi. On the evening of November 11th, his truck broke down near College Road, about 8 miles from Krista's home. A police officer offered to help him, but Brad said that a tow truck was on the way, so the police officer left. Krista's father, Roy, went to the police station every day to ask if there was any more information and to make sure they did not forget the case. A few months later, while searching for Krista, investigators found Krista's driver's license, debit card, and her broken cell phone near College Road, exactly where Brad's truck had broken down. Investigators also found that Brad had lied to them. He said that he was not in the area of Krista's home on the day she disappeared, but his cell phone pinged very close to her home around the time she was last seen. Brad was then named the prime suspect, but he was not arrested. Brad's criminal history began when he was 18 years old. He broke into the apartment of a woman and a soldier. In 1986, he was sentenced to serve 10 to 15 years in prison. He was released in February after serving 14 years, but he was soon in trouble again. He assaulted a female family member and was sentenced to up to 8 years for child abuse. He was paroled in February 2007. It was then that he met Krista and they started dating. I also don't know what she saw in him. In February 2017, Brad was sentenced to 16 to 40 years in prison for misconduct with a minor and using a computer to commit a crime. In February, a warrant for Brad's arrest was issued in connection to Krista's case. He is currently an inmate in the Michigan Department of Corrections. It is not known yet if any new information in the case finally led to the arrest. Ingham County District Court Judge Donald Allen said that even though Krista's body has not been found, Brad will have to stand trial. He also said that he watched the video of Brad's interview with investigators after Krista's disappearance. Not once during the course of that did I see a person who seemed to be disturbed about the disappearance of Krista, Donald Allen said. He also pointed out that Brad did not once try to call Krista after she disappeared. This indicates Brad knew she was not going to pick up the phone. It will be difficult to convict Brad since there is no body, but not impossible. Prosecutors will have to show how unusual it was for the victim to just disappear. The case of Egbert Mano Stewart. In November 2024, 52-year-old Love was sentenced to 40 years in prison, with 5 years suspended to probation. Elkhart County Deputy Prosecutor Anna Rich said it was good to finally get closure on Robert's slaying and thanked the slaying unit for its diligence. She said, "Reed was an older gentleman and his life certainly mattered. He had dignity, which was not respected by Mr. Love in any way. A man was slain, and the perpetrators quickly attracted the attention of the investigators. But it took another 10 years and DNA analysis before a judge said that the police had enough evidence to obtain arrest warrants for the pair." In February 2005, businessman Egbert Mano Stewart was found fatally stabbed in his Heritage Hills condo on St. Thomas in the Caribbean, with a large kitchen knife sticking out of his neck. 63-year-old Egbert was a popular businessman who owned Mano's restaurant, adjacent to the Fort Christian parking lot. On the morning of June 22, 2005, his wife, Vivian Stewart, called the police and said that she had returned home to find her husband deceased in a pool of blood. 6 days later, someone, identified in a police affidavit only as a concerned citizen, called the police to tell them that Vivian was having an affair with Jacques Cajuste. Both were Haitian nationals. Vivian and her lover Jacques quickly attracted the attention of the investigators. The police interviewed Cajuste on June 30th, and he stated that he and Vivian Stewart were co-workers involved in an intimate relationship. Cajuste moved to Pennsylvania a month later, and the police interviewed additional witnesses in February. The police could not find enough evidence to make an arrest, and the case went cold. Almost 10 years later, DNA analysis concluded that Cajuste was a major contributor of the DNA found in the hallway and bedroom where Egbert was slain. The Cold Case Squad took up the case for further investigation in March 2015, and the police finally arrested and charged Vivian Stewart and Cajuste in 2016, more than 11 years after Egbert's slaying. Cajuste was arrested in Pottstown, Pennsylvania, and Vivian was arrested in St. Thomas by members of the Cold Case Squad and Investigation Bureau. Prosecutors with the Virgin Island Attorney General's office filed court documents on September 25, 2019, charging Cajuste with 8 crimes, including first-degree slaying, second-degree slaying, and 6 charges related to use of a dangerous weapon and assault. There is no statute of limitations in the Virgin Island Code for certain serious crimes, including slaying, felony child abuse and neglect, felony crimes, embezzlement of public money, and falsification of public records. But all other felony crimes must be charged within 3 years of the offense, and misdemeanor arrests must be made within 1 year. Judge Francois agreed with Cajuste's defense attorney that the statute of limitations had elapsed for all but the slaying charges. And Cajuste did not flee justice or attempt to live in hiding before his 2016 arrest, which could have triggered a lifting of the time limits. Judge Francois ruled in 2020 that outside of the one interview in February, the people failed to provide evidence that they attempted to interview Cajuste again. Their trials were delayed for 2 years due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and Judge Francois issued another opinion, denying Cajuste's motion to dismiss the remaining slaying counts. Judge Francois found that there is no statute of limitations for slaying charges, and Cajuste's right to due process was not substantially prejudiced by the delay. Retired Virgin Island Police Department officers Delbert Phipps Sr., Rosalind Bedminster, and Daphne Rouse-Carty returned to the Virgin Islands to testify. Virgin Island Police, Major Crimes Officers Sergeant Mario Stout and Detective Nigel James also assisted with the investigation of the cold case. A false start by the prosecution led to another 6 years of legal wrangling before Stewart and Cajuste finally reached trial on August 1, 2022. The prosecution proved to the jury that on the night of June 21, 2005 and into the morning of June 22, both defendants, Cajuste and Vivian Stewart, willfully, deliberately, and with premeditation unlawfully participated in causing the demise of Egbert Stewart by multiple stab wounds. A Virgin Islands Superior Court jury found them guilty of first-degree slaying and abetting on August 11, 2022. Virgin Island Attorney General Denise George said in a written statement, "Justice has finally been served. and I commend our DOJ prosecution team and the Virgin Islands Police Department, former and current investigators, and Cold Case Squad for their excellent work. This case required the teamwork of the DOJ with the VIPD and a relentless determination to bring the perpetrators to justice. She added, "Much gratitude also to the witnesses who came forward. We want our community to know that just because a case is 17 years old, it does not mean we stop investigating." I truly hope this provides some degree of comfort and closure to Mr. Egbert Stewart's loved ones. On January 19, 2023, 63-year-old Vivian Stewart was sentenced to life in prison without parole. It is unclear what 60-year-old Jacques Cajas' sentence was, but he also faced a mandatory life prison sentence without the possibility of parole. Thank you so much for watching and exploring these cold cases with me. If you found the video interesting, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to NA Cold Cases for more deep dives into the unsolved and unexplained.